president spent 3 hours at the hospital for his physical yesterday. Wow, the waiting room must have been packed. He also started building a UFC fighting cage on the White House lawn, so that looks gorgeous. And the Pope wrote a 42,000-word screed about how dangerous AI is, which Anthropic is jumping on the bandwagon for. We also had the DOJ pulling some shady on Friday night in their quest to erase the January 6th insurrection that we all lived through and saw personally. Plus, we have some updates on Donald's 2026 election interference attempts, with one whole state in the South that's seemingly been able to stand up to dear leader. Let's get into it. Our 79-year-old fit as a fiddle president endured a 3-hour medical examination yesterday at Walter Reed Hospital, which he called his, quote, 6-month physical, where he says he received preventative medical care and dental checkups. Okay. After that very long examination for someone who was in tip-top shape, Donald posted on his little fucking social media app that, quote, everything checked out perfectly. Could you tell the giraffe from the gorilla this time? Trump also started building, not like personally, a UFC fighting cage on the White House lawn for the so-called UFC Freedom 250 fight that's set to take place on June 14th, which is also his birthday. Big boy gets a big fight on birthday. UFC says they're the ones footing the $60 million bill for this production, and although there won't be any tickets on sale to the public, they're going to offer VIP packages to certain guests, which are supposedly going for $1.5 million each, so they can recreate that scene from Squid Game. Okay, let's switch vibes entirely. We gotta talk about the Pope. 2 days ago, I had never heard of an encyclical before, but that was before I read Pope Leo's 42,000-word document. Okay, I didn't personally read it, but I read about it. And by that, I'm referring to the encyclical, which is kind of like an authoritative open letter from the Catholic Church to the world's 1.4 billion Catholics. So an encyclical is kind of a big deal. And this is Pope Leo's first, and he titled it Magnifica Humanitas, aka Magnificent Humanity. Can you tell I'm great at languages? And it calls on governments, corporations, and individuals like you, Kevin O'Leary, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, to slow down with the AI development and make sure that the technology doesn't concentrate power in the hands of a tiny little elite, which will worsen inequality, take away the dignity of humans, and even start wars. Imagine that. I think you're late. While the Pope concedes that AI is a valuable tool, he says that it is not human, it does not have a soul, no matter how much you fall in love with it, and he compared it to the Tower of Babel, unfavorably, to be clear. And it wasn't just all rainbows and Bible verses. Pope Leo also gave many practical and concrete recommendations concerning regulations, data ownership, and using AI-related weapons in war. Don't. And to that end, the Vatican was very strategic about how they hard-launched the encyclical. They even invited guests from Silicon Valley to a formal presentation, and they had a co-founder of Anthropic, Christopher Olah, join them to be part of the presentation, which is definitely not how they would normally launch an encyclical. Great PR for Claude, though. Another key highlight of the presentation by Pope Leo included an apology for the Vatican's role in the transatlantic slave trade, which he called a, quote, wound in Christian memory. And this is a really big deal because it's the first time any pope has ever publicly acknowledged, let alone apologized for, the roles that past popes played in giving European rulers authority to subjugate and enslave other humans, and letting them use Bible verses to justify that. And the reason this is all coming up now is because his apology came in the context of the modern need to safeguard humanity in the new AI era, alluding to the slave trade as the potential kind of future that the digital revolution could be fueling. Is someone going to tell the Pope that the people he made this encyclical for, they actually have in mind the future that you're telling them to prevent? Though speaking of human dignity, tens of thousands of people are still currently being held in ICE detention centers around the country. And this weekend, New Jersey Senator Andy Kim got pepper sprayed in the face trying to stop that, after he and Governor Mikey Sherrill joined a protest outside an immigrant detention called Delaney Hall in Newark, where the scene quickly devolved into what the reporting called, quote, unrest. For context, these protests started in response to inhumane conditions at the privately run facility, which led inmates to organize a hunger strike. And that's when Governor Sherrill and other New Jersey elected officials got involved. They tried to get into the detention center to see those conditions and were actually barred from entering, which led the protests to grow throughout the weekend, resulting in a senator getting pepper sprayed. So about that Iran war, the military said that it carried out quote-unquote self-defense strikes against Iranian launch sites and mine-laying boats in Iran on Monday, while the commander-in-chief of said military posted on his little f***ing social media app that the negotiations with Iran are, quote, proceeding nicely. And a spokesperson for the U.S. military clarified, saying that the strikes were done to, quote, protect our troops from threats posed by Iranian forces, but that they were using restraint during the ongoing ceasefire. What ceasefire? Never mind. Sometimes I forget that words have no meaning. And yet, Donald is reportedly going around telling leaders of Iran's neighboring countries that he wants them to join the Abraham Accords and sign peace agreements with Israel after a deal to end the war is negotiated. He reportedly made this comment during a conference call on Saturday, when he was not at John Jr.'s wedding, that included the leaders of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, and Bahrain. Kind of see why he blew Jr. off. And the call apparently concluded with him saying that Jared and Steve will follow up on this in the next few weeks. Great, the Tweedles cleanup crew is on the way. I would die to read the side text between those countries' leaders. The DOJ really thought they could get away with making some Friday before Memorial Day moves and that we'd miss them. And sure, it's Wednesday, but listen up. They're working hard at rewriting January 6th, and on Friday night, federal prosecutors filed motions to formally dismiss the most serious criminal cases from January 6th, including ones that involve leaders and members of far-right groups who were tried and convicted on charges of seditious conspiracy, including a guy who was later arrested again on separate state charges of soliciting a minor. Birds of a feather, right? And then an hour after the prosecutors filed those motions, the DOJ's official social media accounts posted that they were scrubbing their online archives of all news releases the department had issued regarding cases filed against the January 6 defendants, calling those prosecutions, quote, partisan propaganda. I am rubber, you are glue? And then we have future January 6th, which I call the redistricting wars. Federal judges have blocked Alabama's attempts to switch to a congressional map that intentionally redistricted out a majority black district, ruling that there was, quote, undisputed evidence of intentional racial discrimination. This is now going to go to the Supreme Court, while Alabama's election is quite literally on hold, even though some people have already voted in the primaries. Then there's South Carolina, where the Republican-controlled state Senate actually declined to redraw their own congressional map in the way that Donald Trump has been pressuring them to do, which would give Republicans additional advantages in the midterm elections. But before you go commending them for their integrity and restraint, early voting for their primary started yesterday, so redoing everyone's districts would have caused absolute chaos, which doesn't always stop them, but in this case, it did randomly. And finally, we have James Tallarico's opponent for Texas's Senate seat. The very corrupt Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton defeated current Texas Senator John Cornyn in the Republican primary runoff yesterday. If you're unfamiliar with Ken Paxton, he is the kind of crazy that even Republicans think is crazy. So naturally, he got Donald Trump's endorsement last week, which surely helped him win yesterday. Now we see if the altar boy can beat him. Until tomorrow, I'm Sammy Sage, and now you know what's going on. And make sure to follow Betches News on YouTube.